Let's talk about the WBC, the Olympics. You know, you're a Baseball Canada guy.
Originally, the Giants had said, no, I couldn't go. I called one of the top dogs myself. I was like, I'd like to do this. I'm healthy. I'm good. Like, I feel great. I'm doing well, whatever. I'd like to go. And lo and behold, I got the invite to go.
Get together is all about losses to Korea and another 2-2. Got him. Not bad. Chris Begg. It ends for Team USA with a strikeout.
Welcome to another episode of Conversations, and I'm joined by a good buddy of mine, Chris Begg, who was an ex-teammate of, and I've coached the last, 12 years with you.
We've done a lot together.
Yeah, so welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. This is awesome being down here again.
Yeah, just to kind of give, our audience a heads up on who you are. I'm just going to run through a couple accolades of your career. 2001, named MAC Pitcher of the Year. You played for the Giants from 2003 to 2008. You represented Team Canada on numerous occasions, which I was part of your teammate in the earlier days. Participated in 2 Olympics, 2 World Baseball Classics. 2010, you're named to the Niagara University Hall of Fame. And most recently, the last 12 years, like I mentioned, you coached with the junior national team, the 18 under Canadian junior national team. So those are kind of accolades that you've accomplished. So it's want to get into a little bit of conversations with hot topics these days on injuries. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring you in and discuss those things. But let's start how we met initially. Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it was, it would have been the Olympic qualifier in Panama. And we had our training camp in Arizona beforehand in 2003, right? And we both got brought in. It was my first time on first time representing Canada ever. I was never good enough to play on the junior team. So it was my first call. And I think it was it your first time on the senior team?
It was, yeah. That was I was just straight out of university. So I think we were the kind of the young guys on the team.
There was a couple of, there was you, me, Pete Orr, Adam Stern, right? We were all...
Russ Martin. I think Pete Orr came in after, actually.
Yeah, Pete came... Yeah, Panama would have been his first one. He came in because...
Replaced me.
Yeah, because you couldn't go...
I got a ball in the face.
Your face blown up.
Yeah, got a line drive. I still remember that. That was devastating for me. Drop step on a ground ball. I think Mike Lamb might have hit it against Team USA in an exhibition game. And I just signed with Seattle at that time. And I drop step and got a kind of the ground ball in my face, fractured my orbital, my nose, it was a mess. But yeah, that was kind of the first time I kind of met you. And I remember me and Russ Martin were probably the youngest on the team.
Right.
And I came on the bus that I was late, probably the worst thing. And I remember you were sitting there and there was no space on the bus, so I plopped a seat right beside you.
We were bussies?
Yeah, we were bussies, yeah.
We were seatmates there? It's funny because I remember, like you said, we didn't know each other before, but I remember watching you. It must have been during the 2003 season. I'd just been picked up by the Giants and, in the clubhouse, and we're watching a college game, and Houston's on there, and you came up there, and you just looked like a unit. You look like a unit.
They had us doing 3 a days.
you could always hit, right?
Yeah.
I was like, this dude can hit. And I think you friggin' roped a base, a double down the left field line or something like that. I was like, this dude's good, good Canadian guy. I was like, yes. Yeah. So cheering for you without even knowing you. And then, we played it with each other, at least until you got that ground ball, in that camp.
Unfortunately. You grew up in Peterborough? Or no,
Uxbridge.
Uxbridge, okay.
But I played in Peterborough. Okay. It just got to the point where I needed a little bit more to baseball, tried to do what I wanted to do. And baseball's such a small town, right, where we didn't have it. So I was it was suggested to me by a Blue Jays scout and still good friend of mine to this day, Greg Miner. Right. Chopper, yeah. He suggested maybe looking at Peterborough. It was a bit of a drive. It was a solid hour drive each way, but they had really good coaches, right? They had Steve Terry, Trouter, who was Jay's scout and just a legend in amateur baseball. And I went there and kind of had a tryout or whatever. And it was after Trouter's you can play. If you want a spot on this team, we got a spot on this team. So we had a legit team, man. We had some studs on that team. Like I was at that time, I was like the number 4 pitcher on that team. We had Chris Emke, Steve Murray,
Tisdale,
played with the Jays,
right?
Tisdale, yeah. And so I was like the 4th guy at that time, right? Emke was drafted twice, chose not to sign either time, but we'd run through tournaments because we just piggyback off each other. Like one guy'd start, next guy come in, and every game it was like one of us was getting the MVP of the game and everything. It was
I actually
pretty sweet.
remember that. Like, there's a bunch of pitchers in Peterborough that were dudes, and obviously we didn't have the internet, so you just heard word of mouth, that these guys were just dominating all these tournaments. So how did you go from that kind of baseball to Niagara University?
Yeah, well, I started out actually at Winthrop University beforehand, and it was another Peterborough pitcher that was older than me who was at Winthrop, David Steffler.
I remember Steffler.
So he was down in Winthrop, and he knew of me, and he kind of recommended me to the coach. And I was so naive to the whole college. I knew nothing about it. I didn't go on any visits or trips or anything, right? And the coach, I guess, saw me. I think at maybe a Canada Cup or something, Winnipeg or Stonewall, Manitoba, right?
Stonewall.
Yeah. And next thing I know, he made me an offer, and I was like, okay. So I went down there. I didn't go on a visit or anything. It was my only offer. Went there 1 year, and just the way baseball stuff played out, it was going to be a better opportunity for my sophomore year to go to Niagara. So I transferred there, and again, it was through connections. Mike McRae, who used to be a coach at Niagara, and then was my hitting coach at Winthrop. He knew I was thinking about leaving. I think he called the head coach at Niagara, Coach Morrow, and said, "Hey, Begg's leaving. You might want to take a look." And he came out. Coach Morrow looked at me in Welland. I had to play out there because of things that happened during the season. So I was playing in Welland for a year, which is like 2.5 hour drive for me. And I got an offer to go to Niagara there, and it ended up really well, just the baseball wise, where I got the innings that I needed, right? And that was the big thing for development, is being on the field. Yeah,
and that's one thing that people don't realize. People's development happen whenever. We don't know that by age 16 you're XYZ. It's some people develop when they're 21, 22, 23, 25, 27. I've seen development happen as late as 30, right, in terms of seeking your true potential. So what happened from there? Like, Niagara started picking up, you started getting your innings, started to understand what type of player you were becoming, and then what happened from there into professional baseball?
It was so I made some adjustments going into Niagara. Actually, at the end of Winthrop going to Niagara, I changed some mechanical stuff. The big one was arm slot. I used to be like straight over the top, like right as 12 o'clock is 12 o'clock.
That's crazy to see, because I know you as a sinker ball
low
pitcher.
3/4 guy, and that was a huge switch, right? So I went to Niagara with that kind of new arm slot, and all of a sudden things just happened naturally, mainly like movement, right? My velo actually increased naturally. And it wasn't like hunting for it like we do now, and movement happened. So I started seeing better. I was always a command guy. I had to be. I didn't throw hard enough, right? So I was always a command guy. I always filled up the zone. But now I went from a curveball to a slider, and the changeup was there, and I was throwing 3 pitches for strikes, and then I was just getting results. But I wasn't trying to. It just came organically. I think my sophomore year, up until I guess like regionals and conference, that type of thing, when for innings wise, because we didn't make it, so my innings weren't there to qualify for the leaders. But at one point I was like, believe it or not, I was like, I want to say I was like 14th in the nation for strikeouts per 9.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that
did
last.
You're a strikeout pitcher more in college?
I was, yeah. And really it was off 2-seamers into righties, which nobody did at the time because because it was -5 bats. Everybody was staying away from inside, and sliders away. And I was punching tickets. But then eventually kind of, I guess naturally, that stopped happening. And really that wasn't until pro ball that stopped happening. But then going through college, junior year was good. Obviously didn't get drafted. Senior year, I was hoping to be drafted. And I was talking to really, I was only talking to one team, and that was the Pirates. And they called me, when there was 3 days in the draft, and I was back, season had ended after my senior year. I'm back, in Uxbridge and playing. I remember I got a call from them after day 2, and they said, if we draft you tomorrow, you're going to sign, right? And I'll paraphrase. I said, I've graduated school. I'm not going back for 5th year. I still want to play baseball. Right. Yeah, I'm signing. Like give me a bus ticket or whatever. Yeah, that's it. I'm signing. Yeah. So I'm waiting in that whole day, and I got a game that night, and I'm driving to the game, and the draft's going on again, like no real internet. I don't have a phone or anything like that. And find out later on, they didn't draft me. Yeah. And I was angry, like really, I was upset, right? Disappointed. And I ended up throwing really well that night at the game. But then it was a big, now what am I going to do now? So I worked my way back down to Buffalo, slept on a couch of a teammate of mine, and we trained because he was looking to maybe play some independent ball and everything too. And, long story short, I ended up getting some offers from indie teams, and I picked one, and that's where I started. So I never got drafted. League? It was the Northern League. Yeah. I had some offers from other places, but it was the Northern League. I ended up going, my first year was Albany Colony Diamond Dogs. Yeah. The mascot was like a fighting wiener dog. It was like the least imposing mascot in the world, but it was awesome. It was, I had visa issues. So this was 2002. So I didn't get down there until like the All-Star break. And so I'm starting out of the bullpen and, started doing really well out of the bullpen, and something happened with a starter. They got hurt or whatever. And I came into the starting role and pitched the rest of the year. And the end of the year, the team folded. So they sold off all the assets, meaning the players. Wow. Me and 2 other guys got sold to St. Paul and St. Paul Saints.
Right. That's a big team.
That was awesome, man. I loved it. St. Paul Saints, They were amazing. They were just an incredible atmosphere.
Rich history.
Huge. Yeah. The history was incredible. It was awesome. Yeah. So entertaining. Like, just watch the documentary on Netflix or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, but about Mike Veck and his stuff. And a lot of it revolves around St. Paul. And I always said if I was released from like affiliate ball, I'd look to go back there. But so that's how much I liked it. But you started out the season really well. First half, I had like the Triple Crown leader for pitching, including strikeouts still. So
still strikeout.
Still strikeout guys. Like ERA, wins, strikeouts, innings pitched. I led everything. And so we were getting offers. Like we were getting interest. Guys were coming. Guys were talking. Like teams were coming, talking to my manager and all the rest of it. And the first team that legit wanted to sign me right there was the Giants. Mm-hmm. And so talked to my manager, and he said thought it was a good opportunity, so I signed. So at the All-Star, they let me finish out the first half till the All-Star game, and we clinched, and I pitched, and I got it was the only time I've had like the cooler shower in the clubhouse when we celebrated. The cooler shower, they announced that I'd been signed, and next day or whatever it was, a couple days later, fly out to San Jose to start with the Giants.
Nice. So cool. Obviously the Giants were a big part of your career in terms of your development. Not necessarily talk about what happened from a pro standpoint in the minors, but let's talk about how that brought new opportunities, especially with the WBC, the Olympics. You're a Baseball Canada guy. What was that like in terms of, being a catalyst to your career?
Well, I think as most of pretty much all of the senior national team are pro guys, right? Yeah. And I'll be honest, 2003, I go to the Giants, finish the season, get asked to go to Instructs, and it was there that I got a call from Greg Hamilton. And I knew nothing about the senior team before this. I didn't know that there was a tournament, an Olympic qualifier coming up, or even that I was in the mix, being considered, or I didn't think anything of it. And originally the Giants had said, no, I couldn't go.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I was young and naive and bold and brash at the time, I guess. I called one of the top dogs myself and said, I found out that I was that I was told no, that I couldn't go. I was like, I'd like to do this. I'm healthy. I'm good. Like, I feel great. I'm doing well, whatever. I'd like to go. And then they agreed to let me go. Right. But like I said, like from there, you know, you pitch well enough, I guess. I don't even remember all the outings that I had. It's like a whirlwind. And I remember training in the off season before 2004. Obviously we qualified for the Olympics. Right. And there were a few of us that trained together, like Pedor and Sterney and Scott Thorman, and we were all the young guys, and we were just sitting there going, I hope I get invited. I hope I can go to the Olympics. I hope I can go to the Olympics. Yeah, it's huge, right? John Athens, Ogletree, right? Like, yeah, I hope I can go. I hope I can go. And lo and behold, I got the invite to go in 2004. But yeah, it's like at that time, I think, and maybe I'm biased, but there was a core of players that kind of made up that team each year, and we went along, right? And eventually, you know, older guys kind of filter out and younger guys come in, but there was a core for a few years that represented Canada for a while, and I was lucky enough to be part of that core. And I evolved from, you know, my entire career I was a starter until that 2003 team with Team Canada. I was out of the bullpen, and it didn't matter at that point, right? Like, you just want to pitch, you just want to win. I don't care what my role is. If I'm on this team, I'm going to do anything I can. 2004, it was the same thing. I was a reliever. Now, I'd heard that there was consideration between myself and Paul Spaljarek to start. Yeah. Spally, right? I bounced back better than Spally did at that because he was one of the older guys at that point, right? And he had dealt with some injuries. So he ended up starting, and I worked out of the bullpen, and I got into 5 of the 9 games in the Olympics, which was like,
that's great.
It's amazing, right? I think John Ogletree pitched in 6 of the 9, I think, and I think I might have been second. So it's like I got in so many games, and I got the innings, and then from there, then I became a starter again. 05 and 06, 07 I was injured. 08, then I was a starter throughout the career, except for the WBCs, which I'm just filling the role, man. I'm the last guy in the bullpen there, and you let the big league guys kind of run the show. But again, it's like, as long as there's a jersey for you and you play, I don't care what my role is.
Yeah, you're there to win.
Whatever you need, man.
I'm there.
Yeah, 100%. So that's kind of how my Team Canada stuff evolved as far as playing, and so it was really fortunate.
So what was one of the most memorable experiences from that Team Canada? Because obviously Athens, Greece, Olympics was crazy, and we had a really good team that time. I think it was a good chance for a gold medal game, and the way the format was it's not like how the WSBC sets it up now, where there's super rounds. It's more of a round robin play and then single knockout or something like that, or something weird where I believe Canada went 5-0 in pool play, and then that crossover game you guys lost
against Cuba,
and then that automatically gets you into a bronze medal game.
It was that semifinal game, and I mean, I guess memories are good and bad, right? So this is one, it hurt for a long time, and it was that semifinal game against Cuba. Winner was going to go to the gold medal game, loser goes to the bronze medal game.
Right.
And so I actually got into that game. I think Sean Hill might have started, but again, I've got the worst memory in the world. So as you know, my memories are all so fuzzy, but I got in the game, and I was, throwing well, and we had a double play ball. We weren't able to turn the double play, and I faced another hitter, gave up a single. I think that probably scored a run. I came out of the game. I think Chris Mears came in the game after that.
Mearsy, yeah.
At that point, I didn't see any more of the game. I was like, I was angry, right? I was pretty good at controlling my emotions. That was one time I let them get the best of me. I went down into the clubhouse. I might have destroyed a locker, and I stayed in the clubhouse, and I listened to the rest of the game just through the doorways and everything.
It was either Kevin Nicholson or Jeremy Ware. I want to say
Nicholson.
Oh my gosh! Or I'm talking about. I thought it was a bomb,
Nicholson.
And that would have. It was in the last inning, wasn't it?
I think it might have even been for like the last out. It was so. In that game, the wind was howling in from left field.
Yeah.
And we've got like an all lefty lineup. And Nicholson, typical Canadian. Yeah. And Nicholson, who's like, I think he was a switch hitter. or at least he's
Yeah, he
righty
was a
anyway.
switch hitter,
So
yeah.
he's hitting righty. He's hitting right hand, and he crushed a ball. And all I hear, I remember sitting in there, and all I hear are massive cheers, like eruptions. And I kind of like picked my head up, and I'm listening, like, oh my God! And all of a sudden, it was just like crashing down defeat. And I hear that this ball that Nicholson launches into the wind to left field gets caught about a foot from the top of the wall. Guy makes a jumping catch to catch the ball. And it's like game over.
And that was for the gold medal game.
That was to go to the gold medal game. So gold or silver.
Wow.
The funny thing is, like, on the other side, Australia and Japan. Australia, they had a AAA pitcher, Chris Oxspring, I think he threw 6 1/3 innings, 1 run. They beat Japan 1-0 to go to the gold medal game. And we got to face Japan, who was the best team in that tournament.
Right.
We got to face them for a bronze medal game.
Yeah.
We'd beaten Australia earlier in the tournament. I think we mercied them, actually. So I'm not saying it's not a guarantee, but we would have felt a lot better facing Australia in either game, right? Gold or bronze.
Right.
But they have the upset. They go to the gold medal game. We got to face Japan in the bronze medal game.
Cuba's facing Australia.
Cuba's facing Australia for the gold medal game. And that bronze medal game, it was a morning game, whether it was like 9 o'clock game. We just finished a night game. We were pretty low.
Right.
We were pretty low. And really, we got crushed. It wasn't a mercy, I don't think, but it was like we got beat. They were the best team there. So we end up coming 4th in the Olympics. So it was like,
that's not bad. I mean, it's still quite the experience. Not like you guys finished 10th or bottom of the barrel.
You want to know a funny thing? Here's a funny thing. The year later, fast forward a year, you and I were in Netherlands
and Holland, yeah.
And we're there, and we're trading with the Cuban team like gear.
Right.
And I'm up in one of the Cuban players' rooms, and what does he have? It's like a 16 by 20 picture of the catch at the wall.
No way.
And I basically MF'd this guy, like joking around, but it was like I hadn't seen a picture of it.
Wild.
I hadn't seen the play. That was the first thing that I'd seen, like how close ball was to the top of the wall is a year later.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That squad had like the Gurriel brothers, like, I believe.
Yuli was on one of the teams.
I remember, yeah.
He was I want to say he was a second baseman, shortstop or something like
he was
that.
a legend.
100%. But they had some studs. The guys that if they chose to go to the States one way or another, they would have done really, really well. They would have made a lot of money.
That's wild.
Ariel Palma, lefty pitcher, we faced him every time because we were all in all lefty lineup every year.
Right.
They threw the lefty, and he would have been a very, very good major league pitcher. And the catcher, Pistano,
right,
he was unbelievable. He was as good as they come, and he was the glue on that team. He held everybody together. He was so good. Hated playing against him. The world of respect for him, though, like as a player.
And that's usually the case that people don't realize after the tournament's done in any world competition. You go into the Cubans come into your hotel room, and you got to protect. You just got to keep an eye out because stuff gets missing. But then they love to trade some stuff, and I have some pretty cool stuff as well. When I traded, whether you're trading your running shoes that you got for free, you're getting a Cuban jersey or whatever it is, right? Yeah,
I got a Cuban sweatsuit, I think, and
I want to see you rock that. You should have wore that today.
It's in a bin somewhere. One day I will walk in here rocking the Cuban gear. I traded a used pair of turf shoes with no insoles in them for half a box of cigars. Like, and the guy was just like, looked at the shoes, and like, yep, done. He's like, here you go, gone. He's like, whoa, that was quick. Yeah, man, gear. It was awesome.
So let's fast forward. Stay on the topic of international baseball. After your career, you decided to get into coaching, specifically with the junior national team. That's where I kind of re-met you because I started a little later. I started my tenure 2011, I believe. So you're there 2009 on and off. And then, how did you transition from like player? You're playing professional baseball. You're playing at all these tournaments to now coaching, the 18U national team.
Well, it's it comes down to that incredible phone call that you get from Greg Hamilton.
It's always the best phone
It's
call.
always the best phone call, right? And this time it wasn't to play, it was to coach. Right. And I wish, again, as the memories are in and out, I can't remember if my first trip was an East Coast trip, filling in like in the East Coast states before the World Championship, or for Paul Quantrill, I was filling in for him. He couldn't make that kind of 2-week, pre-tournament exhibition game series and everything. Or if my first trip was a trip in Cuba with the junior team. But regardless, I was kind of on the fringe of just getting out of baseball and still kind of trying to look to play and get the call to come and coach. And I was like, of course, right? It's like no hesitation. This is awesome. This is cool. And I never got to play for the team. So now coaching it was really incredible. So I get to go on those trips and seeing like all these young kids who were way more talented than I ever was. And just watching them go through their new routines and everything, and being able to coach and kind of start that kind of.
Was it an easy transition, you think?
Getting out of playing was not an easy transition, and I don't know, because it wasn't on my own terms. Right. I basically had to. I still call it retire, but it was an involuntary retirement.
There's a point in time in all our careers where it's just like, okay, I think this is
I'd been released from the Giants, and I could have gone played independent ball, but I was getting older now. I knew what that meant, and it was because of an injury, right? I had the shoulder injury, partially torn labrum, that kind of derailed me a bit. Right. So it was never easy getting out of playing. But if there was a transition to make it as easy as it could possibly be, I think coaching for your country again, coaching Canada and wearing the jersey again was, everything that I could have lived up to.
Yeah, that I feel the same. Like for me, one of the biggest transition hurdles that I witnessed was, as a player, you just play the game, and you don't realize how fast the speed of the game is when you're playing. You're used to that level, whether you play college or professional. It's quick. The game is quick. And I remember Greg, my first trip, it was back in 2011. He wanted me to coach third base, and I was just like, sure, should be able to do this. And I stood in there, and I was a deer in headlights. I was like, oh my God, this game is so quick from this position. Yeah. And I didn't realize that it takes so much, effort to actually be involved in the game from that standpoint, as opposed to a player. And that was the biggest adjustments, even giving signs, being able to relay signs, control the running game, being in the right position for your base runners, all that kind of plays. And that was my biggest challenge. I remember I told Greg, I was like, I'd rather coach first base. Yeah, so that's my experience, at least. And I ended up settling in well there. I love it now. Yeah, it's something that I thought I would have never done before, but to me, I think that's one of the most rewarding positions as a coach, just because you're involved in the game. But that was kind of like my take on that. It's
definitely like, that's funny that you say, because I never saw your first time there, but I've always said, like, you're slick over there at third base. You're quick. It's easy. It's effortless. Like everything flows just naturally, right? Even just like sending runners, getting signs to base runners or hitters, like in time and everything like that. Everything's just easy. And I know what you mean from, like, you go from playing and you're worried about yourself. As a pitcher, you're worried about yourself. As a hitter, you're worried about yourself. As a coach, you're worried about the other 9 guys in the lineup or whatever. As a pitching coach, you're worried about the entire staff. When do guys throw last? Who are we bringing in? Getting a guy warmed up. Right. What is their strength? What is their weakness? Who's hitting? Where are we in the order? And those are the types of things, when you played, you're not worried about everybody else, man. I'm just worried about this pitch right now. 100%. You can't do it as a coach, right? That was hard. Like, and that's when it speeds up on you, when you can't just have one single thought. You're juggling all these thoughts and everything in your head all at once. Right. Yeah. No, we
traveled the world, obviously, with the 18U national team, and most recently, back in 2022, we were in Dominican Republic and Mexico for the World Championship qualifiers for the 18U national team. And I want to switch gears a bit because, back when I started coaching, we were competing at every level, from the senior national team, like you're saying, in 2004, we were were competing for potentially gold medal in the Olympics. When I started my first World Championships, we were facing Shohei Ohtani, and we ended up beating Japan. That got us into the gold medal game as a 18U, the World Championships. And then fast forward 10 years later from that point, we didn't end up qualifying, and we were there. Mm-hmm. So I remember about 2 years ago, we started discussing kind of like, what can we do to get us out of this kind of funk, or where baseball is headed, at least from a Canadian perspective, because we went from participating in these big events to being impactful. I think we were as high as number 6 in the world in baseball at the time, to now I think we're 19th behind the Czech Republic, which is insane for me, coming from a rich baseball country. So we were in Mexico, and I pitched an idea to you. I know it sounded crazy. I'm like, Beggar, I think I have the solution to kind of fix what I see that's wrong with the way we're developing. And this was a stem of, I guess, the seed that we're working on today called OTU Baseball, an online curriculum where we could educate the fundamentals of baseball, which I believe is kind of the issue that I see from a development standpoint, that we've focused on technology, velocity, all these things that are important in baseball. But that became the driving force rather than playing the game the right way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where we've gone as a country, just in terms of development, because you see it on the internet so much now that that's the number one focus. So part of the conversations that we had was I pitched this idea of OTU Baseball. I didn't even know it was called OTU Baseball at the time, but I pitched that to you, and that was kind of like the birth of what we've built today.
Yeah, that was I remember that we started talking about that
crazy,
in Dominican. We were at probably breakfast. Might have been dinner, but we were at the buffet.
At the buffet.
It
was a
there.
buffet.
I was crushing food. And you brought this up, and you didn't know, because I was just kind of getting out of teaching as well. And you planted this seed, and it's kind of grown from there. But you're right, and it's funny because I don't think it's not just a Canada thing. This is at least a North American thing,
for sure,
right? A Western Hemisphere thing, anyway, from what we see. And it's I heard a radio show or whatever just recently, and they were saying that one of the, and I don't know who it was exactly, I can't remember, one of the front office brass for one of the big league organizations said that when they sign a player, they assume that they know nothing about baseball.
That's now. Yeah, I heard that.
And
that's insane.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
All that player is expected to have
is tools.
Is just these raw tools, this raw talent. But as far as how the game is played and all the nuances and the ins and outs, assume that they know nothing.
Yeah. And I get it from MLB standpoint, because the way I see physical ability is speed.
Right.
So when you're playing high school to collegiate baseball, the big difference is speed of the game, which means more people are running a sub 760. So the ground balls getting to first a lot. Right. You got to be a lot quicker. Velocities increase as you go up because they're physically more mature or talented. So the speed of the game dictates everything at the end of the day. And that's what we've been focusing on in terms of physical development, saying in order to enhance my ability to throw harder, to run faster, we look at the tools, right? But that's all we've been looking at. And we kind of forgot the important part of baseball IQ, fundamentals, the way the game needs to be played at every level. And hearing that just proves that that's where we're at in development. And you're right, it's not only a Canadian thing. And the reason why I focus on Canadian thing, doing this from a Canadian perspective, is we experience it more than the U.S. Because the U.S. can always field 10 different 18U teams, right, and be fine and not see a decline in performance, right? Whereas us, if we follow that trend, we're going to feel it the most because we don't have 10 squads deep.
We're not as deep,
Yeah. So it's like our best players aren't necessarily performing the way they're capable of, like the past, right?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting. It's definitely a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it follows the trends from the top, like Major League Baseball. Everybody is influenced by Major League Baseball and what the Major League Baseball players are doing. What are the big leaguers doing?
Right.
They're all throwing harder. They're all spinning the ball more or better or sharper, right?
Right.
And that floats down to the minor leagues, floats down to amateur baseball,
Sure.
and floats down to like the 12U teams or whatever it is. And if you think about like, especially college kids, high school kids, what are they going to do? What are they all trying to do? They're all trying to make the big leagues.
Right.
They're all trying to get drafted. They're all trying to get drafted high. Nobody is drafting the 88-mile-an-hour sinker baller, right, or the guy who just really executes a hit and run really well. They're drafting the guys who are throwing 100 miles an hour and hit the ball 500 right. feet, right? And it doesn't matter if it's game or not. Right. If you can show that you have that ability, that's what they're paying money for. So kids aren't stupid. Right. That's what they're going to try to do.
And maybe it's a message of, because you mentioned if you throw 88 with sink and you're effective, that's a good baseball player. You're doing your job.
Well, I appreciate you saying that.
I directed it towards you just to make you feel better. But that's the whole point, is that we need to focus on that, being effective in terms of your role. But, you got entities like Major League Baseball, and I don't blame them, because at the end of the day, they're an entertainment piece. They're trying to put on the best baseball in the world, claim that they're the best baseball in the world. But I also believe that we as developers have to show that there's more to baseball than just MLB. Yeah. Like, if you're 88, throw sink, and you're effective, you know how to play the game, hey, there might be opportunity in Dubai now. There might be opportunity in Mexico. There might be opportunity in Taiwan, Japan, Korea, whatever it may be. And I think countries are also looking at that as well, whereas the Western part of the world is just focusing on, let's build these crazy athletes that throw 100 plus, right? They might not know baseball, and I think part of that, our development follows that route, and I think that's part of the issue.
Well, there's a blend, right? Why does it have to be either or? Why does it have to be velo or kind of fundamentals and ability?
Right.
Like, why can't there be a blend? Velo is important, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It allows you to get away with things that you might not be able to if you throw 88, right? But it doesn't mean you're going to have the most success. So why can't there be a blend? Like, look at aging veterans. Yeah. When they get older and they stop throwing hard, what do they rely on? It's experience and know-how and how to pitch and how to work through a game. Like guys like Zach Greinke, like Rich Hill, right? Guys like that are pitching. They figure a lot of that stuff out. Jamie Moyer back in the day, they figured that's. I loved watching
78,
it. Right?
82.
Greg Maddux, like later in his career, he was like a magician.
Yeah.
Right? All these guys didn't always rely on the velocity like they can, like a lot of players do now.
Yeah, I think part of that is the rise of even our society and technology. So I think there's going to be ebbs and flows of that. I think that's why we've witnessed for the last 6-7 years how technology has impacted, because now we're able to take this data and we're trying to use it. And our focus has been over the last 6-7 years of that physical enhancement, right? So now I think there's a more need of that fundamental, because it's the ebbs and flows of, we've seen it because of what society brought to the table. And then now it's like, we as developers have to say, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? Where are the next steps for the future? And that's where going back to the discussion of what we had with OTU Baseball is that, right? Is to teach the fundamentals and streamline the process where, because and everybody that played baseball can attest to this. First thing you do when you finish your career is you need to make money.
Yeah.
What's the easiest way to do? You do private lessons.
Yeah.
And then you do it over and over again. You're like, man, Jimmy's not that good, but I need this money.
Yeah.
So you're spending your time developing these individuals. So the way you kind of get over that hump is, if I could develop 100 coaches or 100 players at once, where it's the basic of baseball. I don't want to spend one-on-one time teaching a kid about balance. Like, I think he could learn that on his own, as long as he has the resources and direction to do so. Then when we're meeting one-on-one, we could work on more advanced stuff. But if the fundamentals aren't there, how could you move forward? So that was kind of the top of mind, where I'm trying to create a solution to that problem I see from my standpoint, because I'm sick and tired of doing these one-on-ones that really don't matter.
Yeah, it's like what you said, like, and private lessons are great because you get individualized attention. But if you're trying to make a difference in the way the game, not necessarily should be played, but the changes that we've gotten away from, how do you bring it back to kind of a neutral spot where the fundamentals are blended with the data and all the rest of it? How do you do that? And you can't do it by one-on-one lessons, right? It's got to be scalable. So how do you scale that?
Scaling is the
how
key
do you
to systems
duplicate
and scaling,
Hung Cho's or whoever the coaches are? How do you scale that and replicate it to help the masses, right? And this is whether it's Canada, U.S., the islands, South America, whoever, right? Eastern baseball, like it's got to be repeatable so we can make an effective change in the way the game is being learned.
Yeah. So that's what, like we're launching OTU Baseball April 15th, which is Monday. So by the time this airs, it will already be released. So go check out otubaseball.com for fundamental baseball resource. I think we have a lot to offer. So kind of good that we talked about this, and, talking about how this all started from just the thought, a conversation, and now we're actually materializing, a curriculum that I feel is going to really help the development of baseball. So check out otubaseball.com. And then, we think there's a lot of value there.
I was just going to say, it's going to constantly be evolving too, right? Just like the game has, this will. There's going to be constantly more and more, and changes made, and we're pretty excited about it.
Yeah, so let's move on to development. Something in the news right now that's a hot topic, and I know you have a hot take on it, which we won't discuss right now. But I'm gonna just read you, and this is regarding the whole Justin Verlander interview that's kind of gone viral. I pulled out a stat that. And this was random, that I kind of said, I'm curious to see the numbers, but I'm going to see your, reaction to this. There were approximately 89 Tommy John surgeries reported in professional baseball during the 1990s. In comparison, a more recent decade saw about 350 such surgeries. Okay? This indicates an increase of 261 surgeries, or a 293% rise from the 90s to our most recent decade. What's your take on that statement?
There's a couple things. Is the identification of it better? So we're recognizing more
could be
elbow tears, and that's part of it, but it's definitely not all of it.
Right.
The other side of it is what's happening, what changes are happening that are leading to these injuries. Right. And to this point, there's been, I think, really three different, points that people are directing everybody to that might affect these injuries. One's velocity, which we've kind of talked about. One is spinning pitches, off-speed pitches, whether it be like a slider, curveball, or even the changeup that pitchers are really trying to turn over, right? And pronate. We're hearing a ton about pronation. Right. And then the third one, which the MLBPA came out and kind of is blaming now, is the pitch clock. And rushing pitchers through it.
I don't think it's pitch clock, because the pitch clock was just implemented this year. So it's like the data suggests that it's not the pitch clock. It might be a factor in.
Yeah. My gut, it's not the pitch clock.
Right.
But I've talked to a couple people. To me, there's an easy way of seeing if it is a pitch clock or if there's a factor there. And it's looking at pre-pitch clock data.
Right.
Go look at the time. Like, you've played with pitchers who work quick, and you've played with pitchers who are human rain delays.
For sure.
Right? Separate those into two groups. So let's say, just take round numbers. Let's take a pitcher who averages 12 seconds or less between pitches. Now take another group who averages 15 seconds or more between pitches. And if you have, say, 1,000 of each pitcher or of each group, now you can start seeing correlation. Is there a correlation between one group or another with more injuries or less injuries? And if there is, then I think you can account some of the pitch clock to some of the injuries. And if there's not, then I think you can disregard it a little bit. But that's one thing that I think is somewhat easy that the smart people could figure out.
Right. So just to put into context, the whole Verlander interview, it was about increasing rates and injuries and how spin rate and velocity is, I guess, Verlander said that was probably the main contributing factor when the focus is there. And he made a really good point in that video saying, because he went to Old Dominion, a good baseball program, D1 program, but he was saying he didn't really do any velocity training in high school, right? So he said his velocity developed as his physical development of his body. He was a wiry, skinny, kid in high school that went to Old Dominion, and he gained his velocity kind of during that transition of development of physical maturity, I'd say. And he said that he didn't really work on it now velocity when he was growing up, and his career has proven that he is a workhorse. He is pretty sustainable.
Beast.
In terms of longevity, right? So I'm looking at him saying, well, he's done something right? So he has a valid point in what he was saying. And the way we're training today is total opposite. We're training for that velocity because that's been the overall focus of development is spin rate and velocity, at least from a pitcher standpoint. And from a hitter standpoint, you got, battles online with, teacher man teaching one thing, but Jeff Fry, throwing flame, that's not the right way to do it, right? So that, just to give you context, that was the conversation that Verlander had. And I do agree with him. It's what the solution is. That's to be talked about.
Yeah, and I agree with him. Like nobody I'm kind of the same age as him, a couple years older than him, but nobody kind of our age really chased velo. You tried to get in better shape. You tried to get stronger. I was 6'3", 170 pounds, 175 pounds at one point. I had to put on weight, right? And you do that kind of naturally, and with the strength, the velo starts to come, and with just experience and throwing more. But your velo training was called long toss. Right. That's how you train. And I still support long toss. I think it's still the best way. Right. I think it's the most natural way. But that's how you kind of went after velo. And I was saying, I didn't throw as hard as Verlander did, but my relative velo didn't start increasing until I was like a senior in college. Right. That's when I started to throw a little bit harder, when I started to get some eyes from scouts and everything, really. Right. But so all those things about chasing, and the other side of it, the one factor we didn't talk about was Ozzie Guillen kind of mentioned it. I don't know if you saw that one. He's like, look at, more or less, and I'll paraphrase again here. Look at athletes today. Look at baseball players today. They're statues. They're carved out of marble. They're in really good, a lot of them, not all of them. But some of the guys, and you look at Verlander now, he's a little bit older. Verlander's never looked absolutely chiseled with like 5% body fat or anything like that, right? No. Some of those durable guys might be a little bit softer, and again, you could easily look at data on that, right? That'd be easy to see. But yeah, we didn't look kind of like a lot of guys do now with how strong guys are getting, and it looks great. You feel great, you feel good, you feel strong, you feel durable. But what's the cost of it? And is it more injuries because you don't have anything protecting those muscles and tendons and ligaments? I don't know the answer.
I think data will help with that, and the right data. So a lot of research has to be done saying what is the root cause. I don't think there's external factors that will help saying we need to make restrictions or anything like that. And I know you have a bold take.
Hot take.
And it's good. I listened to it, and it's on the Oppo Taco podcast for those that, because we don't have enough time. We don't have time to go into this hot take that Begg had, but it's a valid point, at least a point of discussion that I think is important. Carry these conversations out with the right people to see what the root cause of this, and we won't know because it will be more of a long-term thing, because then we could question, does that happen at the youth? Are they doing too much strain where flexibility and mobility is different from a kid developing as opposed to someone who's 21 years old, 22 years old, 23 years old? The body changes, the flexibility is different, and we don't know when people go down. We could say that perfect mechanics are great, but the whole Mark Pryor thing, and that's where I think this all started. So I think it's an evolution of conversations, and as we discuss these things, more and more suggestions come out, more and more people that have the right data can contribute to, I guess, that future version of how we're going to protect our kids, because it is an issue. And I'm glad that this video went viral, because I think we need to definitely talk about it. So yeah, hot take on Oppo Taco podcast if you want to hear Chris Begg's take on injuries and maybe a potential solution.
Now, I mean, bottom line with anything is that players aren't going to protect themselves, right? It has to come from somebody else. And the biggest influencer in baseball worldwide is Major League Baseball.
Right.
That's who needs to come up with the solution. They need, so, I mean, throw all your best minds in one room, shut the door, and until there's something kind of hashed out where you might have some direction of how to change it, how to influence it, and that's going to filter down to that youth level. Look at something like bat flips. Why do 12-year-olds bat flip now?
Right. It's
because they watch
it
it on Major League Baseball, right? And with, bat flips are small, nobody's getting hurt from that. But that's the influence that they have. So if they want to start influencing the way the game is learned, taught, trained for, or anything like that, it's got to start with Major League Baseball. I think they have a responsibility to make some changes to these things in baseball.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that's a good time to kind of end this conversation. But I think there's a lot of valid points, and I want to continue this discussion, in the future, because I think it's along the lines of our area, what we're trying to figure out too, because we're involved in development. And I think it starts with discussions with the right people, and maybe it's a discussion here that it starts, but it's obviously going around right now. And like I said, you could check out Oppo Taco podcast for Chris Begg's take on. I don't 100% agree with it, but it's a
conversation, right?
Yeah,
and it's an idea.
Right, and that's the start. So, but I appreciate you sitting down, talking. The time just flew by. But you're doing God's work in the baseball community yourself. So always appreciate what you're doing, the work you've contributed to baseball development, and your continued passion for it.
Yeah, man, it's been great. This project has been a lot of fun, a lot of work, and I think I'll speak for both of us. We are excited to see what we can do and things that we can help change, and the way we can influence the game ourselves. So thanks, man. This is great talking, and anytime we'll do it again.
Sounds good.